About the time we decided that we were going to turn in for the night, I guess about 10 o'clock, we heard the screaming sound coming from the west of us. To me, it sounded like an animal screaming. I didn't know what it was. It could have been a lot of different things, but we all decided, well, look, we're gonna stay up the rest of the night. We were tired, but we decided to stay up the rest of the night and see if anything comes up. So we did. So about an hour later, we heard it scream again, but this time it was really, really horrid. It was almost like a woman was screaming bloody murder out in the middle of the woods somewhere. And it was weird because you could hear it moving in and out, like it was either flying or it was running really quickly through the woods, but it was really strange. Well, we were on alert by then, and we were sitting around just waiting for something else to happen. So I guess about 1 o'clock or so, I needed to stretch my legs. So I got up and started walking around the campsite. I walked out onto the trail, which was beside the creek. And I just got this strange feeling. I mean, you get this feeling like something's looking at you or something's around. Anyway, I walked back to them at the campfire and I said, look, why don't we get our flashlights, go out onto the trail and go up and down the trail a bit and see what's going on? Yeah, we're not doing anything else, so yeah, we'll do that. So we got on the trail back to back to back with our flashlights and started walking west. We didn't get but 50 foot away from the campsite, and we all saw it. We saw these red, almost tail light, projecting light eyes coming from the creek. Now, the creek was really low at this time. The moonlight was pretty bright as well. So we got a look at the form. And by the time we got our flashlights on this thing, it literally jettisoned itself into the air. And it was like there was an audible whooshing sound when it went up. And I suppose it reached its apex, let out another terrible scream, and flew off. And it was screaming the whole way as it was going away. It was that quick. Well, we're freaking out. We ran back to the campsite, and my friend was not talking. He was shocked. And the other guy mentioned to me, he said, did you see the wings on this thing? Or the structures on its back? And I did. I saw something on its back. It looked like it was high on the back and reached over the head. But I never saw anything unfurl. I mean, I never saw the wingspan. And this thing seemed to just jettison like a rocket while standing in the creek without using any type of propulsion. But the red eyes were very distinctive. I mean, they were large. They were projecting light. They weren't reflections. They were really bright red. So we were prodding my buddy to talk. He eventually did speak up. He said, I'm not spending the night here. I'm going up in the administration building and spend the night up there. So he and the other guy went up there and they spent the night. I stayed at the campsite. I wanted to see this thing if it showed up.
You're pretty brave.
Yeah, well, I was freaked out at first, but I was up there for a reason. I wanted to see what this thing was. So, but nothing else happened that night. So, after this occurred, I told a couple of people about it. I didn't really mention much about it to anyone. I talked to a couple of people who were associates of mine, paranormal wise, and it wasn't a whole lot said about it. But about 2008, I guess, about 20 years after that, I had been writing the blog for a couple of years, and I decided that I had already mentioned in the blog about my Bigfoot encounter, but I decided I was going to go ahead and write up an article about our encounter with this red-eyed winged being. So I did. I wrote it out. And about a week after that, I got an email from a gentleman who lived near the campsite, and he told me, he said, I've been hearing that screaming sound for over 20 years now. He said, he asked me, he said, do you believe it was what you saw? Well, I don't know, it could have been, But it was interesting. So not long after that, I got a phone call from a scout leader who had just been up to Camp Conawago a couple of weeks prior to calling me. And he told me, he said, you know, that Saturday, that weekend, we were up at Camp Conawago. We were in the area around where you were. And that Saturday, you know, the boys in the troop were just walking around the campsite doing what kids do. And they came running back, screaming and crying and telling him that they saw what they called a dragon on the trail.
Mm.
Now, he thought they were pulling his leg. You know, he said, you know, I don't know what they're talking about. He went ahead and said, okay, said, but they didn't seem too freaked out enough that they were going to leave. So they stayed for the rest of the weekend. Well, anyway, he said, you know, I thought this was all a story just, you know, just to jerk my chain. But now that I read your encounter, I wonder if that's what they saw. So you know, I'm thinking, well, it didn't look much like a dragon, but the way the kids had described it, it could have very well been the same thing. Well, as time went on, I started receiving reports of people seeing this creature on the along that creek as it winded eastward towards the Susquehanna River, where it emptied into, which was about a 15-mile stretch. I had about 5 reports. The last one I received from them was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. But people have seen it. And that's when it started hitting the local news. And what they were calling it, what people were calling it was old red eye.
So they all
And
saw the red eyes, though. That's the thing. They must have all referenced that same criteria.
exactly.
Right.
And the
Okay.
body structure as well. And the body structure, which is interesting. And I think if you think of destiny, I don't know if you believe that type of thing.
Mm.
This creature that I saw looked very similar to what people in the Chicagoland area have been reporting since 2011.
Yeah.
The overall, it's like a 5.5 to 7 foot tall, emaciated, dark looking being with wings that, for the most part, are gargoyle like or like bat like. Now, look, some of the sightings we have had out of Chicago had the insectoid wings or the owlman like wings. We've had various descriptions. But for whatever reason, you know, I believe that my encounter and the sightings that have been going on in Chicago and then the coincidence of us, and I don't believe in coincidence, quite honestly. For some reason, I believe I was supposed to see that thing and get involved with this whole investigation. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with this Chicago Mothman phenomena, but we have been working on it since that time, all those years. It's almost 14 years now. And we recently did a Unsolved Mysteries episode about it. And my team and I have been working on that since then. But at this point right now, we're still getting sightings. Yeah. We have what we believe are legitimate documentation of about 184 sightings within the Chicagoland area.